Well, welcome back, folks. Today we're going to talk about the solution I ultimately derived to replace the original dampers on the top and bottom of the headlight ears here and here, these black pieces that you can probably just see. There's 4 of them, 2 on each headlight stay or headlight ear. If you recall from a previous video, I had mentioned that I had to come up with a solution because the original pieces did not come with the bike. The headlight ears were in fact in a box, and those rubber dampers were missing. And I had looked on eBay and found some well-used items that were dried and cracked, and I did find 1 or 2 at one time, NOS parts that were very expensive. So I had to come up with my own solution. So this video is going to be taking you through that process. Now, this is not intended as a how-to. It's rather to illustrate my thinking and the process I went through. There's a couple little iterations I tried before I arrived at the final solution that you see here. So we're going to begin this little journey over at the computer, and we're going to take a look at the original parts that Honda specified for this application, and then I'll take you through a couple of the steps or the attempts I made to come up with my own solution, and ultimately we'll come back to the bike and look at these a little bit closer. So let's move on over to the computer and take a look at. Well, here's the Honda parts page. This is from Partzilla, but most of them will look the same because they come from Honda. Item number 16 in the red boxes, so you see the one here and then the one down here are the 2 parts in question. Honda calls this a rubber headlight stay, and you can see here it's not available with the part number. And indeed, it's not available. They're quite rare, apparently. They probably just didn't survive being rubber. Rubber just doesn't hold up well over the years, even in storage. Occasionally you'll get decent rubber parts that have been stored properly, but if they've been exposed to light or temperature fluctuations over the years, quite often they don't survive, even when they're NOS. So, and certainly used, that was my experience. Everything I found used was cracked, dried out, damaged, very poor condition. So that's what forced me to come up with my own solution. So I did do some looking for these part number, or this part number rather, right here, and didn't have much luck, and that's what forced me to come up with my own solution, which we'll move over now. We'll take a look at a couple of iterations I went through before I landed on my final. One of my objectives in coming up with a solution is I wanted it to be a vinyl or rubber, preferably, because it would be soft, of course, and have that damper effect, which I believe was the original intention from Honda, since they specified a rubber type compound for the originals. I had considered briefly using a black ABS plastic pipe fitting and machining it to size. It probably would have worked, but again it would have ended up being a hard plastic, which really wasn't going to work for me. The first stop, my first attempt was, I thought, well, let's try just some rubber O-rings, a rubber type. I don't think these are actually rubber, out of my inventory, and I thought if I stacked them, 2 or 3 on the bottom and 2 or 3 on the top, it would provide the damping effect and fill that space that I was looking for. These are 33 millimeter inside diameter O-rings, and I believe they would have worked. The problem I had is the aesthetic. You would end up with seeing these joints here between all the O-rings, and that just didn't work for me. So even though that would have been in a pinch a solution, it's not where I decided to finally go. So then I thought, well, I'm just going to go down to a large local big box hardware store that has all kinds of items, of course, such as plumbing and plumbing fixtures and hardware. And my first thinking was to use, or my next rather, was to use just a grommet, and that's what these are here. And these are like electrical grommets that are used for cutouts and panels, and you can see the slot right there. And my thinking was if I could find a set of grommets that are about the right size that would slip down maybe with just a little tension on the fork tube, that would work. Well, I did find these. These are 1 3/16 by 1 3/8. 1 3/6. This is Imperial. one and 3/16 inside, 1 and 3/8 outside, and the fit was almost perfect in terms of sliding over the fork tube with just a little bit of tension, not much. And I thought, okay, I might be onto something. So I bought a bunch of them, brought them home. I think about 8. Brought them home and started doing some test fitting. And what I found, if I put one on the top and one on the bottom, that was my original thinking, like this, that would be a fairly decent solution. However, I found that wasn't quite enough. It didn't really fill that gap between the headlight ears. So then I took a second one, and what I found worked best is I stacked, as you can see there, I took the second one and stacked them. I cut away the lip. I think you can probably see right there where I cut away that lip, and that lip fit up inside of the headlight ear like that. And then I put a full piece grommet underneath it, and it would look like something like that. Of course, this lip would be up inside of the headlight ear, and with one on the bottom, that worked just about right. That was just about the right depth, and it would have provided the solution. Again, the problem I had was this gap here, this groove. I'd have one here, and of course one between these two grommets, and then of course on the opposite end I would have this groove. So I thought, well, can I fill that? Is there some way I could experiment with filling it in so it disappeared? And I even went so far as I took some black silicone RTV, and I experimented with filling that groove with black RTV. It actually wasn't black, it ended up being gray, I think, as you can see there. And that was an abject failure. That just didn't work at all. Getting it in that groove so that I could fill it completely, and then my thinking was to just wipe it off with solvent and make it nice and smooth. It didn't work. Of course, the color's wrong, and it just got really messy and hard to control, so I threw that idea out right away. So even though this solution would have worked in terms of functionality, it fit about right, and it would have provided me with the damping I wanted, because these are quite soft. I just cut this away, by the way, with an X-Acto knife. You see I made 2 of them, one for each side, to experiment. No great science to it. I just took an X-Acto knife and just trimmed that away until it fit comfortably up inside of the flange on the headlight ear. And ultimately I felt, well, let me see if I can come up with a better solution, something that looked better, because I didn't like these grooves right here, this channel. Didn't like the look of it. So I went back to the hardware store and just started wandering around, and I came up with what is actually the final solution, which we're going to take a look at on the computer next, because I had to cut up the originals to make them work, and I wanted you to see what they look like before I cut them up. So we're going to move the computer. Ultimately, after wandering around the hardware store for a while, the plumbing aisles and the hardware aisles, I came upon this plumbing fitting. This is a rubberized, in fact it probably is rubber, fitting designed to join 2 sections of pipe together. And you can see the worm clamp, otherwise known as a Jubilee clamp. There's 2 of them. And it comes in different sizes. I think you can get them all the way down to, or at least they go down to 3/4 inch. This is a imperial size part. You can see here the 1 inch in the upper left hand corner. I think they go down to 3/4 and then all the way up to very large sizes. So I carefully had considered what size to buy, and ultimately I thought the 3/4, which they did have in inventory there, I could compare them. The 3/4 was going to be a little bit too small, so I went with the 1 inch, as you can see here, and I bought 2 of these. And then I had to modify it. First thing I did, of course, is remove the clamps, and this gives you a little bit better perspective of the design of the clamp, or the fitting rather. And my thinking was that I could use this end right here, the outboard ends on each side, to really become the damper that I was looking for. So after removing the clamps, I cut these ends off. I cut each outboard end off, and I left a lip here, as you can see, on each one of them, approximately 1/8 of an inch imperial or 3 millimeter, and that's just an approximate measurement. I did not really measure it, and I just took an X-Acto knife, and this cut very easily with an X-Acto knife. And so from each fitting I could get 2 pieces, or for one headlight ear, the top and the bottom. I ended up, after doing some test fitting, discovered that it was a little bit too big in diameter. And so what I did is, and this is exaggerated here, I spread it open a little bit. I notched it out. I just took a section out here of probably 3/16 of an inch or so, maybe a little less, to allow it to fit inside of the cup that you can see here at the top. I think you can see it right here, just at the top of the screen. I wanted that lip here to fit into that cup, and it was a little bit too big. Now, would a 3/4 have worked better? Maybe. My concern was the 3/4 inch was going to end up being stretched too much, and so I just notched this out, like I said, 3/16 of an inch or so. And then it fit perfectly into the top and bottom of the respective headlight ears. So you can see how it fits right there, and I'm just holding it down with my finger. When I cut that notch out, let me go back to the previous screen, I started out with and made it slivers. So I first slit it so it was in half, and then I just kept removing slivers and doing test fitting till I got it to fit like this, which I was happy with. And there you can see it's just sitting inside of the, in this case it's the top of one of the headlight ears. I think that's the left hand side. And there they are installed, top and bottom respectively, of the left side headlight ear or mounting bracket. Now we'll go back over to the bike and we'll take a little closer look at the final installation. And here you can see the rubber grommets are installed on each side. The seam where I had to cut out the section I put on the inside here and here, so it faces in, and you can hardly see it at all. It's a nice fit. I was very fortunate. The combined thickness of the top and bottom grommets was just about perfect, so it provides the ability for these ears to rotate just a little bit. Okay, so they're tight, but not overly tight, as you can see there. So they can be moved, but not easily. So it was just about a perfect fit vertically in terms of the thickness here of these pieces. And again, I had to just remove that little section on each one of them. The lip that fits up inside of the headlight ear itself holds it together like this and like this on each side, so it's not going to pop out. So all in all, I'm quite pleased with the solution. If, for instance, these didn't fit, in other words, this was either too thick or too thin, I could have either shimmed it, which I would not have preferred to do with some kind of black rubber. I would have had to come up with a solution for that, or I could have put it on a belt sander and just made them thinner if necessary because they were fit too tight. But fortunately, I didn't have to do that. Here's the original piece after I cut it off, each end. And the original price for each of these, the two of them, I had to buy two of course, was around $6 US each. So for $12, because remember I could get two out of this, the top and the bottom. For about $12 US, I have my solution, and I think it looks good. I think it looks probably as original as you're going to get, and it's nice and soft, and I think it's going to be very serviceable, and I don't think anyone will ever know the difference between this and the originals. So that's going to be it for this video today, folks. Any issues, questions, thoughts, drop me a note. Otherwise, as usual, thanks for watching.